The reasons why I wanted to talk to you this year, and I thought this would be basically the main conversation we'd be having, and then the Verizon strike happened, is the public question on the state's obligation to public pensions. You have a very succinct way of describing just how we've gotten to the point that we are now. The commonly referred to starting point is the Governor Whitman administration. Is that a fair place to start when it comes to talking about just how we've got to the situation we're in now?
Yes, it is.
Take it away.
So, over the course of more than 20 years, the state of New Jersey did not make its payments into the pension plan. And it does begin with Governor Whitman and the fact that she promised income tax cuts. And in order to fulfill that promise when she was running, the way she gave large income tax cuts to very wealthy people was she didn't make the pension payment. That's what happened. And that continues. At that point, the pension was probably at 120% funded. And that continues through many different governors where they don't make the pension payments, so they could maintain those income tax cuts for very wealthy people. And we go in the period of 2 decades from having a pension plan that was extremely well funded, that cost virtually nothing to the state. Nothing, maybe $100 million for all of it. It was very small payments at that time overall, and workers continued to pay in. And under Governor Whitman, the rate that workers paid was increased, and then it was increased again under Governor McGreevey, and then it was increased again under Governor Corzine. And now it is up to 7.5% of pay for the civilians and 10 for 9.5 and 10, 9 and 10 for the uniforms. Very, very expensive.
Police firefighters. Yep,
state police. And the plan has been lowered very, very significantly. We've basically lost 30% of its value, and we pay about 25 to 30% more for the plan. The plan is considered to be the 95th worst plan out of the 100 largest public plans in the country.
So why are we contemplating putting a public question on pensions this November?
So in 2011, Chapter 78 was passed, where the governor and the legislature essentially made a deal and a promise, which was, we will pay for the pension finally. We will make our payments, and we will say that paying for the pension is a contractual right. And in exchange, we will increase workers' contributions to health care by about 25%. And we will lower the value of this plan and increase payments to the plan from workers. And that was the deal. And so we began with that deal, and then the governor reneged on it and didn't pay it after he ran around the whole country saying, I saved the pension, and we made a contractual deal. The right to funding is now contractual. We sued. We ended up going to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that in the state of New Jersey, under the current Constitution, the only way to legally require payments be made is to change the Constitution.
Now, the governor gave his State of the State earlier this year, and he made a strong argument, giving him his due. I don't expect that he convinced you to amend your position, but his argument was that a constitutional amendment would put any administration in the position of requiring pension payments to be made at the cost of everything else, or before everything else. If there's a natural disaster like Sandy, we can't attend to that until we make pension payments. Education, healthcare, and he went down the line. And then the Star-Ledger came out a few weeks later and said that, they put it in political terms, but they basically said that, the indicators are that a recession is probably more likely than not likely in the coming years. And if we hit another recession, we're going to have this obligation, if the Democrats have their way, to make these pension payments. So I'm asking you, how do you respond to those arguments?
Well, parts of them are just not true,
Okay.
and other parts are more nuanced than that. So, first of all, the governor, how do you know when Chris Christie is lying? His lips are moving. The amount that what the constitutional amendment says in terms of the amount of the payments that will be due is exactly the amount that he went into court and said, we can't afford this, I want to change it, we're now going to pay it in tenths. So that's what the constitutional amendment does. It's the exact amount that he said we should pay. So that's what's in the constitutional amendment. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that what the constitutional amendment does is two things. It says you have to make the payments quarterly instead of making them at the end of the year, which means that you can't wait until the end of the year and you have a problem and then decide that we're going to pay every single other thing but the pension. It actually puts the pension on the same level as other things, including the millions and billions of dollars they pay to bondholders. They've never made them wait 1 second. So it makes it quarterly. So at the time of the quarter payment, you either have that money or you don't have that money. And if you don't have that money, then everybody is equal. The pension is equal to everything else. It's not, you don't wait till the end of the year and take it away. And if you make these payments quarterly, we will reduce the $80 billion unfunded liability by $14 billion, $10 to $14 billion, just by making the payments quarterly. So it actually equalizes the pension. The pension has been last. It's not that this makes the pension first. It makes it equal. It has been last. This gives workers a contractual right to those pension payments. The fact of the matter is you can impair a contract under law if it's reasonable and necessary to do so. But that means that contract gets treated like other contracts. It makes it equal to other contracts. And that is really the point. It is not true that in an emergency that you couldn't not have the money if you didn't have the money. It's just you can't pick out the pension and have that be the only thing that you don't pay. The other part of this is that the state is ultimately going to pay one way or another. People are entitled to those pensions. The pension costs $8.3 billion a year coming out of the fund. If you let the funds go bankrupt, you're going to have to take that money and pull it out of general funds. The cost of making the payments is a lot less than the cost of taking it out of general funds. And if you don't do that, if you allow the pension to go bankrupt, you renege on pensions for 800,000 people and their beneficiaries and actives, you destroy the economy of the state. Our plan in terms of this constitutional amendment is to pay at the lowest level we can and keep the pension solvent. We have figured out a way so that very moderate growth would more than pay for it. And in fact, if we make those payments and we stop investing in these ridiculous hedge funds with enormous Wall Street fees, there will be enough money to pay this pension and keep it solvent.
For those people who are not receiving a public pension and who don't work for the governor, why should they vote yes on a constitutional amendment that would compel the state to make these payments?
So I think there are two reasons. The first reason is that we either believe that government, and I should preface this by saying that workers are really paying 75% plus of the cost of those pensions, that the reason the pension plan is underfunded is because the state hasn't made its payments and the interest on that. So workers pay, the civilian workers pay the overwhelming portion of the pensions that now could go broke even though they paid for them. But I think that the public generally does believe that government needs to really keep its promises. And workers have made every single payment in. We've been trying to protect this pension for 20 years. This is not dissimilar to Social Security promise. You can't ask people pay in 10, 20, 30 years, and now their pensions are in jeopardy because the government didn't pay its portion, really probably so that they could give tax cuts to rich people. I think that New Jersey voters believe that government has to keep its promises. So I think that's right, first issue. And then the second issue is that what the governor's saying is not true. It's not going to cost them more in taxes at all. The fact is we've designed this in such a way that it shouldn't. And even if the state doesn't have the growth we hope, 3% modest growth, a millionaire's tax would more than pay for it.
I was not very authoritative on that issue you just mentioned, the New Jersey Public Pension Fund, and how it's paying fees and performance bonuses to private fund managers. I saw on NJ.com the figure of about $720 million paid out of the public pension fund. Is that right?
Every year. And it's increased enormously. When Christie came in, those fees cost about $150 million. We are at 720. I thought it was 29 million. I can't remember.
I have a number, yeah.
We are at that number just since the Christie administration came in, putting that into the pockets of Wall Street managers, into hedge funds, and the rate of return has been actually slightly less than the traditional investments.
In other words, all this effort, and we're not getting the payback that the state is not getting the payback that it should be getting.
I'll tell you, this is, we would say in Yiddish, this is a shanda. This is a disgrace. We have workers, people who work for the Division of Investment. They invest about 65%. Their returns, and it costs nothing, right? Their returns are slightly better than what the Wall Street investments are. And we don't pay anything to invest. We're paying this obscene amount of money that's coming out. We're paying for this is 35.5% of the money is being invested in Wall Street instruments. Come on, this is just disastrous. And we think that if we reinvested the hedge fund money, there'd be some non-traditional investments. We can do some of that, but New Jersey is an outlier in terms of the amount that's being invested. I don't know if you saw, New York just got rid of its hedge funds. They're not going to invest their pension funds in hedge funds. California, CalPERS eliminated all of their hedge funds. Nevada doesn't invest in hedge funds. We are an outlier, and we are paying a fortune for it, and that is money that could stay into the pension plan and be invested more traditionally, more safely, and then we would benefit from it, a lot.
So the authority that oversees this is the State Investment Council. What do you want them to do?
Oh, we won't. I want them to disinvest in hedge funds. I want them to get rid of it.
Plain and simple.
Yeah.